Hey guys, how's it going? So today I'm going to be reviewing Flag to Flag for the Sega Dreamcast. Now, when I first picked up this game, I thought it was going to be completely mediocre. And the reason is because it is one of the cheapest Dreamcast games that you can buy, and on top of that, the cover is just very generic. But let me tell you guys, this game actually surprised me. I'm not going to say either for the better or for the worse, because that's basically what I'm going to cover in this entire review. So let me get started on why does Flag to Flag for the Sega Dreamcast surprise me by starting this review. So the story of this game centers around a Formula 1 racing championship that occurred in 1998 and was set up by an organization called CART, which is short for Championship Auto Racing Teams. Now, this is actually very cool because it's centered around something that happens in real life and also the year that I was born in. I was born on January 30th, 1998. Unfortunately, this is probably going to be the Achilles heel of my rating system because in order for a game to do well on this category, it has to have like full-blown cutscenes, and all these characters that interact with each other. I think it's pretty obvious that this kind of stuff is not necessary for a sports game, but unfortunately the story is a part of my grading rubric, and I gotta give a score to this game for that. So I have thought long and hard, and I thought the best decision for any sports games that's like similar to Flag to Flag that basically does not have any cutscenes or anything like that, I decided that I'm gonna give all these types of games a 10 out of 20, a very middle of the road score. And the reason why I'm deciding this is because of, the game did not necessarily try to have, like a good story, but it doesn't necessarily fail at doing it either. So I thought it would be best to give it a 10 out of 20. Unfortunately, this makes it hard for any sports game that I review to be able to get a gold seal of approval, because basically it has to get perfect scores on all my other rubrics to get a golden seal. If it loses any more than 1 point in the other categories, it would not be getting a golden seal. But to be fair though, if a game does manage to do well in all the other categories, it is a phenomenal game that I would absolutely recommend. So let's see if Flag to Flag is able to prove itself by not missing any more points in the other categories. So the next thing that I'm going to be talking about is the gameplay, and inside gameplay I'm going to be talking about controls. So this game controls like every other Dreamcast racing game there is out there, where you control the steering of the vehicle with the analog stick, you pull the right trigger in order to accelerate your car, and then you decelerate by pulling on the left trigger. You can even change the camera by pressing on the Y button, and let me tell you guys, the camera in this game is pretty awesome because you actually get a first-person mode of you being actually in the vehicle, and I typically like staying in this camera perspective, but you can also choose one of two different perspectives that occur behind the car. Now, Flag to Flag is essentially a Formula 1 racing game, and as I've already mentioned before, you basically play through the CART's championship that occurred in 1998. And this game has a very impressive roster because you got 19 different racetracks, which are actually based off their real life locations. And actually the cool thing is that when you're selecting the tracks in the menu, they actually tell you the dates that the actual CART championship actually took on those racetracks, which is pretty freaking awesome. They also have like 27 different drivers that you can play as in this game, and they all are unique. And there are like essentially 18 different racing teams, and yeah, so it has a lot of variety in the roster of this game. However, this humongous roster would not be worth anything if the gameplay of this game isn't good. Fortunately, it is, especially the championship mode. So the championship mode is actually very customizable. You can do many things with it. I can't necessarily like talk all about it at once in this video because it would take too long, but if you look through the instruction manual of this game, it will tell you basically all the things that you can customize in this game. It's freaking awesome. I actually quite like it. But anyways, back to what I was saying about the championship mode. you have like you can select between all of those 27 different drivers, but you're gonna have to stick with them throughout the entire championship, because yes, the championship mode of this game simulates you driving through all 19 of those real racing courses. So yeah, so it's pretty cool. A thing that I like about this game is that this game tells you like what the weather conditions of the racetrack's going to be like, so you can actually remember what I mentioned before about customizing your car. Yes, you can actually customize your car in order to adapt to those weather conditions, which is pretty sweet. Another thing that is great about this game is that it gives you a lot of practice before you race in the real championship. So what I mean by that is that this game offers two modes for you to try out the track in. They are practice and qualify. So practice is exactly as it sounds, where you basically just try out the track and it doesn't really matter, you know, like how you do it. You just practice in it for as long as you can. And then qualifying is where you race it in the track, but you're timed. And depending on how well you do with your time, you get different positions in the real championship. So of course, you know, if you get a very good time, then you get a pretty high position in the actual championship. But of course, if you do bad in your time in the qualifying mode, then you obviously are probably gonna get last place in the real championship. So you gotta do well in the qualifying mode. And then of course, when you're done with this mode, then you get a chance to actually race in the real championship where it all matters. And I must tell you, it is a very immersive experience, because it gives you a huge amount of laps in order to race against these cars. And then of course, you know, as I mentioned before, the first person perspective that you can get in this game, wow, it really helps to the immersion of racing in this game. And then on top of that, I like how like when you smash into cars, they like break into pieces, which is pretty cool. I quite like that. And of course, you know, you can actually go into the pit stop in order to fix your car and, you know, make your car go faster again, which is pretty sweet. And I must say, I had a fun time playing the championship mode of this game. It was really great. There were a few things though that I did not like about how this game like controlled. So I really like the nice touch that when you're going at very high speed, your car cannot turn that much. And it's pretty obvious, because that's how Formula 1 racers are kind of like. You can't really turn them that well when they're going really fast. So you have to slow them down before you go into the curves. The problem I have with the controls though is when you're actually going slow, because the problem is that this game's control is very twitchy. It basically controls like a little input on the analog stick is basically it like makes your car like turn like absolutely left or absolutely right, which is insane. And yes, I know you can possibly turn down the sensitivity of this game, you know, like for the controls and all that stuff, but unfortunately that's not a very good idea, because when you're going in top speed, if you have your sensitivity turned down, you can't really control your car at all. So, you know, so basically just turning down the sensitivity of the analog stick in this game would make it worse. Another problem that I have with this game is the grass and the dirt. Because what happens is that like whenever you touch the grass or dirt, your car like doesn't gradually stop, it abruptly stops. Like I'm talking like you could be driving like 180 miles per hour, but then touch this thing, you're dropping down to 90 really fast, which is retarded because that's not very realistic. But that's what this game does in terms of its grass and dirt. Another thing that I had a problem with is the you could literally just like run into walls and it doesn't really affect you that much, because like it doesn't like damage your vehicle, and then like you could literally just keep holding down the acceleration trigger and then like you know like just keep trying to steer in the right direction with the analog stick, and your car just like speeds up again to like 100 miles per hour like instantly. Like it's kind of ridiculous. So yeah, so obviously the controls and the physics of this game isn't the greatest in the world, with the exception of when this car goes really fast and it doesn't steer that well. I kind of like that, but unfortunately that's not all I have to critique about this game, because in addition to the championship mode, there's also the arcade mode. And I'm sorry to say this, I don't think the arcade mode of this game is very good, and I got a couple reasons why I say that. For one, it's not nearly as customizable as the championship mode, and and also it doesn't offer like any like practice rounds. So basically, you're going into each one of these races just basically cold-handed. And then on top of that, this game this game mode, as I should say, is absolutely stingy in the amount of laps that it gives. It gives you like roughly like 5 or 4 laps versus like the 20 laps that the championship mode usually offers. And and that's already very unfair enough. It makes it very difficult in order to get first place. But then the thing is that it literally starts you in the last position every time in each one of these races. You don't get a qualifying mode so that you can be at a better position. You literally start in last place every time, which is infuriating. So it actually makes the arcade mode very difficult in order to get first place. And I don't mind difficulty in games, but however, I do consider, like unfairness as not a very proper form of making a game difficult. Another thing that I have to say about the arcade mode, the pit stop does not actually work. Yes, I kid you not. You could literally treat the pit stop as if it's some kind of like shortcut or something like that. It is absolutely the most retarded thing I have ever seen. And it was really confusing for me because the arcade mode was the first mode that I actually played, not the championship one. So I actually thought all the pit stops were all like for like show, not that they actually worked. So, as you guys can probably tell, I did not have very good first impressions of this game because I didn't like the arcade mode that much, and I really didn't like the jittery controls when you move the car at slow speeds. However, I really had a fun time with the championship mode, and I thought that would be enough to redeem this game from getting a bad score by me to getting a decent one. Flag to Flag is going to get a 15 out of 20 in the gameplay section. So the next category that I'm going to be going over is graphics. Now, this game has a huge potential to have amazing graphics because it has 19 different racetrack locations, so they all should look unique and awesome on their own. So the problem is that this game fails to deliver in this department because I don't know, man, all these racetracks just look very samey with each other. The actual graphics and of the buildings, the terrain just looks all very samey. There's nothing that stands out from that makes each racetrack stand out from each other. The textures on these buildings are very dull looking. It just and there's not even that much special effects going on. The car models don't look that great either. The wording and the advertisements that show up on the cars, they just look very blurry and all that stuff. And then the car models themselves also look very jaggedy as well, so there's a low polygon count on that. And yes, I did like the first person perspective in this game, but oh my goodness, the driver's hands look hideous in this game. They literally look like lobster claws. Yeah, they look that bad. Yes, I don't think the graphics in this game is good, but I also don't like how this game performs. It does not perform very well. I wouldn't have mind all these downsized graphics if it was for like a 60 frames per second game. But no, this game runs at 30 frames per second. And on top of that, it actually has slowdown in it. Yes, there are actually several instances while I was recording for this game that it actually slowed down pretty bad. Well, not absolutely chuggy, but it was still very noticeable. And that's a real shame too, because Tokyo Extreme Racer, another game that came out on the launch date of the Sega Dreamcast, ran at 60 frames per second and has better graphics than this game. So there's absolutely no reason why this game shouldn't be able to do 60 frames per second as well, with no slowdown, but it is what it is. So yeah, I don't think the graphics in this game is good and the performance is not too hot either, so I'm going to give this game a 12 out of 20 in the graphics department. So the next thing that I'm going to be talking about is art and presentation, which is not the same thing as graphics. It's more like how does the font look? Is the game stylish? Is the game menu easy to navigate? Things like that. And I think for the most part, Flag to Flag does pretty decent in this category. I think the menu system of this game is really easy to navigate. It's easy to work around. I really like the character select screen and the map selection screen. I think they look pretty stylish there as well. The thing is that I think the HUD of this game is very generic. It's just there to tell you all about the information, but hey, it does that job pretty well. So because this game, like has a pretty decent HUD screen and it's pretty easy to navigate in the menu, I'm thinking that the score I should give this game in art and presentation is a 16 out of 20. So now that we got that category done, it's time to move on to the last one that I'll be going over, which is music and sound design. If you like the way that Sega's music sounded in the 90s, you're going to love the soundtrack to this game. And by the way, I love the way that Sega's music sounded in the 90s. It's very catchy, it is very upbeat, has cool electrical guitars and synthesizers in it. And and it really pumps you up for the races and all that stuff. It's very nice to listen to, and it really complements the what's going on in the screen. So yeah, and of course the sound of the race cars are pretty good too. They have a lot of menace and power to them. They sound like Formula 1 racers. So yeah, I really love the music, and I love the sound effects that go on in this game. So for that, I'm thinking that I'm going to give this game easily a 20 out of 20 in music and sound design. Alright, so now that we got the final category done, it's time to count them all up. So, just to recap, Flag to Flag got a 10 out of 20 in story, 15 out of 20 in gameplay, 12 out of 20 in graphics, 16 out of 20 in presentation, and finally 20 out of 20 in music and sound design. When you add all of this up, it equals to a 73%, which means that this game gets a bronze seal of approval. Which, by the way, a bronze seal does not necessarily mean that a game is bad. What it means is basically, so you can view my seal ranking system as gold as being phenomenal, silver as being good, bronze as being okay, and disapproval is the one that's bad. And remember how I told you guys that I thought this game was absolutely going to be mediocre, so I thought it was going to get a seal of disapproval. But no, when I objectively reviewed this game with the harshest amount of criticism that I can get, it actually managed to get a bronze seal of approval, and it's not actually that far away from getting a silver seal of approval. So yes, that is why this game actually surprised me. I was surprised about how well did this game do on my ranking system, and I was actually surprised I actually ended up liking the championship mode of this game. So yes, once again, Flag to Flag for the Sega Dreamcast got a bronze seal by me, which means it's a pretty average game. So yes, it's not going to be the most amazing game in the world, but it's still a game that I would recommend that you guys try out just for fun. Because this hobby is all about fun anyways, right? So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this review as much as I enjoyed making it. This is the Sega GeneCast. My name is Michael, and may the dream be with you. Oh, and one more thing. Have a Merry Christmas, y'all.